I feel like we've got a dirty war on our hands in the making. That is what it seems like, as Trump's Gestapo is taking place and mass deportations are happening very indiscriminately and yet very specifically on certain people. And there's three basic buckets, right? Latino immigrants, Palestine protesters, and like just for DEI shits and gigs, white randos. That's sort of the buckets I've got. Trump on Friday, I believe, invoked the Alien Enemies Act, which is only invoked or has been invoked during wartime in this country, specifically to go after Venezuelan migrants. It deported over 200 of them to not Venezuela, to El Salvador, strangely enough, saying that they are part of Tren de Aragua gangs. I got to say it right. It's just funny to me, Sam, that like Tren de Aragua started in a prison. I feel like maybe you wouldn't want to put, if you think that these immigrants are all gang members, which they're not, like don't put them back into prison. You know, maybe try something else if you're trying to nip gangs in the bud, but doesn't matter. He basically as these flights were heading towards El Salvador, a federal judge ordered them to be returned in the United States. That was ignored. The judge has put a 14-day restraining order on this Wartime Enemies Act, Alien Enemies Act, but it still went forward. I think you've seen this video. This is like a promo video that Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, put out of these Venezuelans being deported from the United States and then having being violently hauled off. I mean, they got like a drone camera for this.
Oh yeah, I mean, this was a complete propaganda. I mean, look at this.
Look at this.
Absurd.
So, and they're hauling people away. They're shaving their heads and their beards and everything. Got a little royalty-free music in the background, at least we hope. And these are people who, by the way, we're now learning just happen to have tattoos.
Yep.
A tattoo artist happened to have tattoos. He entered this country legally. He was seeking asylum. A teenager in Dallas who had a tattoo is also among the deported. A 26-year-old whose wife said he's not in a gang. Again, this is just blanket, pick them up. And then, Nayib Bukele, who's been a friend of this administration because, he runs a police state. In response to the federal judge ordering the flights to turn around, basically, he tweeted, "Oopsie, too late. Ha, laugh, cry face." So yeah, that is.
And then Marco Rubio retweeted that.
They're buddies. Marco Rubio was in El Salvador, was in San Salvador meeting with Nayib Bukele while Elon was hollowing out the State Department, or a USAID. And Marco was like, damn it. So that's what's happening. And like, you gotta say, this is horrifying, but it also speaks to the ways that the narratives about undocumented people in this country have fed into this very moment. And anyone who seriously thinks that Tren de Aragua is like a scourge upon our country and that we're taking over buildings in Aurora, Colorado without evidence, this is on them too.
It is clear from the reporting that there are at least some people where there's a lot of evidence that they're not part of that gang. There is zero evidence that any of them are part of that gang. If they were such a problem, the idea that ICE could either swoop in and get 200, arrest 200 like this, like what? Why weren't you? What were you waiting for? If they're committing crimes, what have you been waiting for? To swoop in? You've been waiting 2 months for doing this? Of course, it's absurd. But on top of which, this Alien Enemies Act, like you say, has been invoked only 3 times in the history of this country. The War of 1812, World War I, World War II. The pattern there is that I had to use the word war each time it was invoked. there is no way you can say that right now we are involved with a war or any type of enemy incursion. Remember, after 9/11, which was done by multiple sleeper cells in this country, this was not invoked. And so,
which is crazy to, and again, I'm never going to be that person that's like, I miss George W. Bush. Like, no. But the fact that, no, they created an entire other infrastructure and, the Patriot Act,
there's all lots
DHS,
of
and
problems,
everything
but
else.
Also, remember, you did not have now 25 years behind you in 2001. You did not have 25 years of the Federalist Society judges, because that's what they're banking on. They're banking on a right-wing judiciary that is going to sign off on this, because there really isn't a lot of legal precedent as to whether the president can invoke this at any time. There's no way you can argue that immigration is a greater threat now than it was a year or two ago. I mean, the number of border crossings, the number of whatever metric you use, it's literally like a 10th or a 20th of what it was, in the wake of COVID. And so there's just no way to argue that there is some type of like emergency in which this act needs to be invoked. The only question is whether a right-wing judiciary will say you can do it whenever you want, is essentially like it's president's prerogative. And that is something that would have been completely impossible for George W. Bush to have done in the wake of 9/11. But, we're 25 years later and there's a whole different judiciary.
Yeah, no, it's terrifying. And also, Justice Roberts today, because I believe Donald Trump wanted this judge who issued that, stay on the Alien Enemies Act to be impeached. And Justice Roberts like, well, now I'm your friend, but you can't just do that. We shouldn't be
worry
doing
about that if that's not Robert's way of seeming like I'm impartial. Now come to me with a case that's going to be material. And
absolutely
good. I'll do you another solid, like he thanked him for at the State of the Union.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This Supreme Court is basically like, we'll totally green light your dirty war, but like try, just like do a little once over, copy edit it, run it through a couple more lawyers, and then, we'll sign off. Speaking of the dirty war, there's more. And I think this is where it concerns like our people, as, students who have said anything about Palestine, people on student visas, H-1B visas. This is a week after Mahmoud Khalil was swept up from his apartment next to his 8-month pregnant wife. And so you've got Columbia student Ranjavi Srinivasan, who's a Fulbright recipient. She just fled to Canada, which makes sense given what they are facing. And that's pretty much what this administration wants people to do.
Yep.
There's Dr. Rasha Alawi, who was a kidney transplant specialist on an H-1B visa. I believe she was deported because she had photos on her phone of the funeral of Hassan Nasrallah, Hezbollah leader, which is like, if you're Lebanese, that's not that crazy. And then you've got random whites. You've got a German-born green card holder, 34-year-old electrical engineer who was tortured by Border Patrol, it looks like.
At Logan Airport.
He was stripped naked and showered by 2 officers with ice-cold water. He hardly got anything to drink, and then he collapsed. And then just today we learned that this a woman named Jasmine Moody, an actor, was held for 12 days while she tried to do the right thing and come forward and be like, hey, I just want to renew my visa. I'm going to do that at this port of entry. And they held her for 12 days. And that's like the other thing. And I just have to like share these other stories. But in Baltimore, there was a new article from The Nation out explaining how where ICE detention facilities have been shut down, immigrants are being held in facilities that are not meant for long-term stays, that don't have proper showers, bathrooms, privacy, anything like that. So a grandmother from Central America who did not have a criminal record was not allowed to shower for the entirety of her detention. She was denied toothpaste, toothbrushes, hair ties. She had to use a public toilet cell in front of other detainees. Someone with HIV wasn't given their medication. A trans woman spent 8 days alone in a holding cell before being transferred to an all-male detention facility. A Belizean man in his 50s who suffers from diabetes, lived in the country since he was 6 years old. He was in removal proceedings while serving in a state prison sentence when Sergio took on the case last year. That's his lawyer. ICE transferred him to the Baltimore courthouse upon his release without notifying his lawyer. For 2 days there, her client, who's diabetic, required constant glucose monitoring treatment, was not given his insulin or other medication, and became delirious. Upon his transfer to a facility in Florida, he was placed under medical observation for 23 hours due to uncontrolled diabetes. ICE is saying their detentions and holding these folks in, random holding cells, which really should be they're like drunk tanks, right? They're like, halfway points, that those are not subject to national detention guidelines. A spokesperson wrote that the agency, quote, remains committed to enforcing immigration laws fairly, blah, 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 ensures that everything is in full compliance with federal laws, but also we're not subject to those. So it really is like dirty war tactics, and it's coming down on, innocent fucking people.
Yeah, I mean it's a real problem. I mean, I vacillate between wondering if this is, the beginning of a broader plan, or if it isn't a recognition that they don't have the ability to deliver what they had promised their followers, which was mass deportation. So in lieu of that, they're going to try and pursue the most egregious of deportations, the most extreme and propagandistic, and the ones that seem most intimidating and cruel. I have a feeling it's somewhere in between. Like, I don't know, I don't know that they're, Stephen Miller is sitting saying like, get the kidney specialist, what the prize kidney specialist, so that we prove to everybody that anybody is in trouble. I have a feeling it's more like, the fact is that a lot of ICE officers, if you will, were basically washouts from the police academy.
Right.
They're not, I mean, you don't want to paint anybody with like too broad a brush, but I don't think you need to, I think you can get a fairly wide brush and say, these people are sort of scummy. And so when you take off the handcuffs, essentially, or the shackles, and you just say, guys, go to town, nobody's getting in trouble. You have no accountability. Their natural instinct takes over, and they go for the easiest, safest targets for them, right? The ones that are going to cause them the least amount of danger, where they can get as much of their sort of like rocks off on intimidating people. And that's the type of people they go for.
On the grandmothers, on the people who are literally working construction sites. A Venezuelan man picked up at a construction site. This is like the opposite of going after hardened criminals, because, that requires, police work and
Yep.
It might be kind of hard to go after them. You can't just sweep them up and, there aren't that many hardened criminals. Meanwhile, yes, our president is a convicted rapist. I mean, sexual abuser, pick your poison. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's just whatever. It doesn't matter. It's indiscriminate. It can be anyone. However, that's not the case for someone like Mahmoud Khalil or students who are being targeted, right?
So they'll take solicitations. They have a request line. And
you
if it's
can
the right
tweet
person,
at Marco Rubio. This is like, people can rat out. It's indiscriminate for everyone, but then it's like, but Palestine protesters, really.
Yep.
What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do it.